Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be doing a deep dive today into something I find pretty fascinating. It's this whole idea of spirit guides and whether they might be kind of nudging us towards the fifth dimension. Our source material for this deep dive is a YouTube video by Sonia Choquette,
No.
who's done a ton of work in the, intuition and unseen world space.
Yeah, Sonia's awesome. She really dives into some pretty interesting stories right from the get-go. She talks about like a near-death experience she had.
Wow.
And even a time when there was like a spontaneous healing during one of her events. So it really kind of gets you hooked right away. It makes you wonder, like, is there actually more to this world than we normally see?
Definitely. Okay, so before we fully get into the, how to recognize the signs that you might be moving into the fifth dimension, I kind of want to talk about this whole concept of the fifth dimension because it sounds kind of sci-fi, but the way Sonia talks about it, it sounds a lot more like a state of being than an actual location.
Right.
What do you think she means by that?
Yeah, I think she's hinting that like in the fifth dimension, we're like super connected to everything around us, not just like physically, but like spiritually too.
Yeah.
It's like our intuition is just flowing and our creativity is on fire, guiding us in ways we don't even realize.
So instead of feeling alone or afraid like we sometimes do in the third dimension, you're saying that in the fifth dimension, we'd be feeling totally supported and secure, knowing that we're part of something way bigger.
Exactly.
You
Got it. And that's what opens us up to guidance from the spirit realm, from our spirit guides. Like we're tuning into a radio frequency we couldn't hear before.
Okay, I get that. But here's where my logical brain kicks in and is wait, how do we know if it's really guidance or just our imagination? Sonia even mentions finding guidance in the line at the grocery store.
Right.
How do we know if it's real?
That's a great question. I think you're hitting on a key point there. Sonia talks about this logic brain, which is always trying to explain everything away as a coincidence. But she's really encouraging us to tune in to our intuition, our inner senses.
Yeah.
Like all those subtle feelings and knowings that we often brush aside.
So it's like learning to trust those gut feelings, even when our logical mind's no, that's just a coincidence.
You got it. And those gut feelings, that's just one way that guidance can show up. Sonia actually outlines 4 main channels: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and then those heart and gut feelings that we were just talking about.
Okay, I need a refresher. Break those down for me. I feel like I've heard those words, but don't totally remember what they all mean.
Of course. So clairvoyance is like when a random image just pops into your mind, like a vision almost, like a flash of insight that feels super vivid.
Like an aha moment where you suddenly understand something.
Exactly. Now, clairaudience, that one's not about literally hearing voices, but more like sensing vibrations, kind of like music,
Oh, so how a song can make you feel a certain way without even using words. It's about picking up on those subtle energy vibrations.
You got it.
Yeah.
And then there's clairsentience, which is all about feeling energy. Have you ever walked into a room and just felt a certain vibe, even if you were alone?
Oh, yeah, totally. You can almost sense the energy of the people who were there before, even if it's just a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's clairsentience in action. You're picking up on the leftover energy.
Okay, and then that leaves us with the heart and gut feelings, which I think we all experience on some level. But how do we know if those are actually guidings from our guides or just indigestion or something?
Well, that's where Sonia brings in this really helpful traffic light analogy.
Okay.
She describes green light guides, which are those feelings that encourage you to move forward. Red light guides are those that tell you to stop. And then yellow light guides say, hold on, wait a minute, gather more information.
That's actually a really great way to think about it. So a green light guide might be excitement or feeling aligned with something. And a red light guide would be a knot in your stomach or a sense of dread.
Exactly. And then those yellow light guides are like those nagging doubts or questions that are telling you to pause and think things through a little more.
So we've got all these different channels of guidance, but Sonia also shares some really powerful personal stories about this, like the one with her brother and her mother's intuition, right?
Oh, yeah. Her mom just had this really strong feeling that something was wrong, even though she had no logical reason to think that.
Yeah.
And it turned out that her brother was in danger, even though he was mistakenly identified as someone else in an accident.
That's incredible. It makes you really think about how powerful intuition can be, even when it doesn't make sense logically.
Right. And Sonia says that in the fifth dimension, our intuition actually becomes stronger because we're more connected to our spirit guides. They're always sending us messages, but it's up to us to be open and listen.
So if you're feeling kind of stuck or disconnected, maybe the first step is just acknowledging that guidance is available and asking for it.
Exactly. Sonia even suggests talking to your guides,
Hmm.
even if you don't hear a voice talking back. It's all about opening yourself up to the possibility of receiving guidance and being willing to listen.
That's some really great food for thought. But I know that Sonia also offers some really practical advice for those who want to actively seek guidance.
She does. And that's what we're going to be talking about next.
Yeah.
One of Sonia's favorite pieces of advice is actually really simple. She says to go for a walk.
Oh, really? Just go for a walk. That seems almost too easy.
I know, right? But she makes a good point. Like, when we walk, it gets us out of our heads and into our bodies.
Yeah.
It helps to clear out all that mental clutter and make space for those intuitive insights to come through.
So it's like we're physically walking away from the noise and into a state where we can actually receive guidance.
Exactly. And she suggests that while you're walking, you can actually try, like, verbalizing your questions or desires to your guides, even if you don't feel, like, super confident about it.
I like that. It's like saying, hey, guidance, I'm over here. I'm ready.
Yeah, exactly. And, Sonia also talks about how guidance doesn't always show up in these big, obvious ways. Sometimes it's really subtle, like finding a parking spot right when you need one.
Yeah.
Or overhearing a conversation that feels like it's meant just for you.
Oh, those little synchronicities. I've always wondered about those. Are those actually signs, or are we just like reading into things?
Sonia definitely believes they're signs, and she encourages us to acknowledge them no matter how small they seem. The more we pay attention to those little nudges, the stronger our connection to our intuition becomes.
That makes sense. It's like we're training ourselves to recognize those whispers of guidance among all the other noise. But Sonia also talks about oracle cards as a tool for connecting with guidance.
Yeah, she sees them as kind of like a tangible way to access our subconscious and get guidance in a more structured way.
I've played around with oracle cards before, and I find them really insightful, but I know some people are a little skeptical. What would you say to someone who thinks it's all just random?
I think it's important to go into it with an open mind and heart. If you're already convinced it's fake, then you're probably not going to get much out of it. But if you approach it with genuine curiosity and a desire for guidance, it can be a really powerful experience.
You know, something Sonia said about the fifth dimension really stuck with me. She said, it's not about being perfect or happy all the time. We can be going through challenges, feeling lost and confused, and still be in the fifth dimension.
Totally. She even shares a personal story about this. Remember when she talked about going through a period of grief after losing her brother and father, and then going through a divorce she didn't want? She was really struggling. And then her daughter received guidance that they should move to Paris.
Oh, yeah. And wasn't Paris considered like a dangerous place at the time because of the terrorist attacks?
It was. And Sonia even admits that it seemed a little crazy. But she had this deep feeling that it was a right thing to do. So she trusted that guidance and took a leap of faith.
And it completely changed her life, right?
It did. It's funny how guidance works like that. It often leads us down these unexpected paths, but ultimately it's for our highest good.
So how can we know if we're getting genuine guidance or if it's just wishful thinking? I think that's a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, I get that. Sonia says it can be tricky, but she recommends paying attention to how the guidance feels. If it aligns with your values and brings you a sense of peace or excitement or expansion, it's probably coming from a true place.
But if it feels off or fear-based or misaligned, it might be a good idea to question it.
Exactly. And remember, we always have a choice. We can choose to follow the guidance or not. But even if we choose not to follow it, it's still giving us valuable information. It's telling us something about ourselves and what we might need to work on.
Sonia also makes a good point about how guidance doesn't always come as a complete roadmap.
Right. She says it's more like we get the next step, the next clue.
Yeah.
And we're invited to trust the process.
So it's less about knowing the destination and more about taking those inspired actions one step at a time.
I like that. That's a great way to put it. And, it takes a lot of trust to do that.
Yeah.
But that's where the fifth dimension comes in. When we're operating from that state of higher awareness and connection, that trust becomes easier. We know that we're supported, even if we don't have all the answers.
I love that. So even if we're feeling totally lost, we can still tap into our inner guidance system. It's always there waiting for us. Yeah, it's like we have this amazing internal GPS, but we've totally forgotten how to use it.
I like that analogy. And the more we start paying attention to the signs and following those nudges, the more accurate and reliable that internal GPS gets.
So it really is a practice. The more we do it, the better we get at it.
Exactly. And the rewards are huge. I mean, Sonia talks about how Being in the fifth dimension brings a level of peace and purpose and creativity that we don't experience in the third dimension.
So, having gone through this whole video and all of Sonia's advice and stories and everything, what were some of the things that really stood out to you?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing for me was just that reminder that we're not alone in this. We have this whole team of guides who are always supporting us and cheering us on, even if we can't see them.
Yeah, it is kind of comforting to think about that, isn't it? Like knowing that you have this whole group of beings who are there for you no matter what.
Absolutely. And they're not just cheering us on. They're also like whispering guidance, sending us signs, and helping us navigate all the ups and downs of life.
So for our listener out there who might be feeling a little lost or uncertain about things, what would you say is the most important thing to take away from all of this?
I would say just remember that you are fully capable of receiving guidance. You don't need special abilities or anything like that. It's all about cultivating a sense of openness and trust.
And don't be afraid to ask for guidance.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it out there.
Even if you don't know exactly who you're asking or how to ask, just put that intention out into the universe.
And pay attention to the signs.
Yeah.
They might show up in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
But they're always there. You just got to be looking for them.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. If you could receive guidance right now on any area of your life, what would it be? What's that one burning question that you would ask your guides?
Yeah, just take a moment and think about that. Maybe write it down or just hold it in your heart and then just see what happens in the next few days or weeks.
Maybe you'll overhear a conversation that feels relevant, or you'll have a sudden flash of insight, or maybe you'll just get a really strong gut feeling about something.
Exactly. Just remember that guidance is all around us.
Yeah.
We just have to be open to it and trust the process.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into spirit guides and the fifth dimension.
It was fun.
Yeah. Until next time, stay curious and keep those channels of intuition open.